Welcome back to another episode of Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University. Our guest today on Better Than I Found It is University of Oklahoma golf coach Ryan Hybl. Ryan and I go back to his high school days when I was the assistant coach at Oklahoma State. Mike Holder and I were recruiting Ryan. He was the number one ranked junior player in the country, and it was quite a recruiting battle. We didn't end up getting him. He went to the University of Georgia, where he was an All-American, but he has since become one of the great college golf coaches in the country. And Ryan has a lot of wisdom and certainly has a lot of great perspectives that I think are worth hearing. So I truly hope you enjoy this podcast. All right, Better Than I Found It listeners, let's all give a big welcome to University of Oklahoma men's golf coach Ryan Hybl. Coach Hybl, so good to have you on here. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while.
Well, I appreciate you inviting me and staying persistent, and can't wait to get into it.
Well, you say persistent, that's true, because sometimes I ask at inopportune times, and we're either busy with recruiting or coaching or whatever, but thank you so much for doing this. This should be a blast. You and I have a history. We have a history going back to my basically first year as an assistant coach for Mike Holder, and that's 1997. And I remember the first time I actually saw you was at I believe it was Doral in maybe what would have been your junior year in high school. Man, that's a long time ago.
That is a long time ago. I actually randomly just talked about Doral with a guy I met in the pro shop at Jimmy Austin this past week. His uncle was one of the founding fathers of the Doral Publix Junior. We talked about that event. Back in the day, it was something that we all kind of put on the schedule right around Christmas time. And to be honest with you, to jump in there on a memory, I actually won that tournament maybe in 97. I can't remember. It might have been 98. But playing the 18th hole, the Blue Monster coming down the stretch, winning the golf tournament was extremely difficult. And I'll never forget, I hit a 6-iron to the middle of the green to win that golf tournament. It still sticks out as one of the best shots I've ever hit in my life, just because that is a hard, tough, big-time hole.
I don't know if you remember watching Tiger win there. I think it was one of the early World Golf Championships, and he was just limping home trying to make a bogey. He blew that driver straight right and just kind of laid up and hit a poor wedge and just somehow or another made a bogey to win by one. It's not an easy shot.
It's not, especially you think about the late 90s when the ball was spinning everywhere. To put the tee ball, you had to put in this little sliver of grass to the right because you couldn't cover it. It always seemed like it was somewhat back into the breeze, and then that iron shot coming in pretty narrow green. Anyway, that's our time on Doral, but that was a great golf course.
Yeah, and I remember that spring after I'd followed you there, Mike Holder, I was obviously his assistant coach, and you were one of the targets we had for the upcoming classes. And we actually I saw you at Firestone, and you were paired with J.C. De Leon, a kid we were recruiting as well. So I remember that. So I've got these early memories of Ryan Hybl kind of in the recruiting process when I was following. And I seemed like when I was following you, I was following with either Bruce Hepler or Chris Hack. But there were two other coaches always in tow. And that was not those two really tough guys to recruit against.
Yeah, that was the good old days. Heck, that was back. We're into the national letter of intent signing week this week, right? Everybody's signing.
Yes. If
you think about that, Coach McGraw, that's back when my years, some of the final years of guys extending all the way their commitment until I want to say I committed to the University of Georgia maybe 3 weeks before NLI week. Just the pressure that came along with that as a coach now, thinking about that and how just, we didn't know any better back then because that was standard. But for you guys as a coaching staff, I can imagine how stressful that was.
Well, I do remember being stressful, but I remember two things that really stick out. One was the actual recruiting visit you took to Stillwater. which we need to talk a little bit about. But the other was the PGA National. It was a junior event there in the middle of the summer. It was hot, and I got there way early. And I told Mike Holder, I'm going to go down there, and nobody's going to follow Ryan Hybl more than me. And so I got there the day before the practice round, and they were playing two different golf courses that week. And I looked on the starting sheet for the next morning, and you were the only junior golfer scheduled to tee off one of the golf courses at 7 a.m. And I thought, this will really impress Ryan Hybl. And I was there at 6:55, and you looked at me like, what in the world are you doing here? And I walked 18 holes before Bruce Hepler got there, before Chris Hack got there, because they watched the afternoon. And okay, I was one up on those guys.
Yes, you were in your bone pants and an orange shirt every day. He wore bone
Every
pants
day.
for all you listeners. He loves bone pants and still does.
Yeah, I still wear those. I'm in a pair of stone or bone or whatever you want to call them, off-white pants today because that's all I know. They're easy. I think it's easy when you don't have to choose what to wear. You just go in the closet and there's a pair of bone pants and that's what you wear. It's pretty good. But the other memory I have is Mike Holder deciding this is going to be the greatest visit a recruit has ever had, ever. So we did everything. We found out what your favorite music was, and we got some CDs. We found out that you love playing ping pong. We bought a ping pong table for the indoor facility. We did everything, and Mike Holder put me on charge that week that I was going to eat faster and more than any human ever has to really impress you with my eating skills. How'd that do?
You did great. From what I recall, we went to a little pancake shack, and I want to believe you ate at least 4 or 5 pancakes before I even touched my eggs. So you've always been able to do exactly what you needed to do. So me not coming to Oklahoma State wasn't your fault at all. It was nobody's fault. It was just part of the recruiting process, Coach.
It was part of the recruiting process, but I will say this: we gave our best effort, and Ryan Hybl ended up a Georgia Bulldog, and honestly, that's a whole nother story. What a career you had there and what a team you guys had there while you were there. But before I get to Georgia, before we get to your playing career, let's talk about your family because you come from a family of coaches, educators, athletes, a little bit of all of that. Let's talk about it. I mean, your dad, obviously a coach, your mom, an educator, and I think your mom was an athlete as well. And your brother, a great quarterback at the University of Oklahoma, and you obviously were a quarterback and a golfer. So talk about how that all came about, such an athletic family.
Yeah, the older I've gotten, the more I've had time to reflect back, obviously, on my upbringing and my family, and just so thankful of not only my family but where I grew up, little small town in Hazelhurst, Georgia. I give a lot of credit to the neighborhood that I was part of. I don't think that gets maybe enough credit in the sports world of what backyard ball means. Because we would go from each person's house, we'd go swim, we'd go play baseball, we'd go play football, basketball. We'd ride our bikes out to the golf course. I used to live about a mile and a half away, so I'd have to load up my golf bag and ride down the busiest street in Hazelhurst, Georgia, with my golf bag while semis were blowing their horn. And that's what we did all summer long. And thankfully, I grew up in a time frame where that was allowed because nowadays I don't think you see that anymore. I'm not going to see a kid with a golf bag on their bicycle riding to the golf course. But yeah, my it starts with my mom and my dad. My mom, even though she was an educator, she was one of the greatest coaches of all time, coaching her 2 sons along the way. And she was very disciplined in who she was and what our family was about. My dad was super busy. He was a high school football coach and AD, basically my whole upbringing. So he was really busy, and Dad was very involved with all of our sports, but he was also very busy with his job as well. So Mom took the brunt of a lot of our scheduling and just always was very, very supportive of what we were doing. And I don't ever remember my mom being that person that critiqued very much. I think she always knew that we were giving everything that we had and believed in us and just was there for us and making sure that we were on time and doing everything right. and so we learned a lot from my mom for sure. My dad, he was a great football coach. He wasn't a good football coach. He was a great one. He always got the most out of his teams. You know, we were in a double A school, which back then there was only 4 classifications in Georgia. So double A, you know, that's a small school, but it's not super small. We were always very, very competitive. And, you know, that just growing up in the locker room, uh, I've also been able to look back over the years and realize that whenever I stepped foot into coaching and why I knew maybe coaching was something that I wanted to do, a lot of it was because I was maybe ahead of the game in some departments that other guys that get into coaching, they didn't have, you know, 18 years of being in a locker room like I
Mm-hmm.
was. I mean, as a young baby, I mean, I'm sitting there hanging out with everybody, and so I learned a little bit more, you know, in my rearing days, on how to deal with teams and personalities and people and how to manage and all those kinds of things, because I was just fortunate enough to be around it as a young kid.
Well, I mean, your dad obviously was a great influence on your coaching, I would assume. And I mean, like if your dad gave you one thing or something, what are the best things your dad gave you that made you the coach you are today? Because he gave you something.
Yeah, I would say this, that my dad, um, I think anybody that played for him would come back and say the same thing, that he always was able to get the most out of all of his players by digging in and being very disciplined in what they did on a day-to-day basis. And you know, obviously the X's and O's of football are way different than golf, but still just trying to figure out how to get the most out of every team every single day is ultimately, you know, my job, our job, as coaches. And you know, we're trying to make a huge influence on our guys, but still, uh, why they hire us is to try and get the most out of our teams. And you know, when you get through the program of my dad's, the guys that made it through the program, and now everybody talks about culture, you know, that's the common theme word. I grew up that word being program, and what your program is all about. Excuse me. And my dad's program, if you made it through, you always wanted to come back and be a part of that next generation. And a lot was because you knew that you gave everything that you had, and that you didn't leave anything back. And that's what we try and do here with our guys in our program as well.
Well, that is probably you couldn't have said it better, honestly, because that's what I've witnessed, you know, as a colleague of yours, as a contemporary, a peer of yours. I mean, I've noticed that it seems like your players almost always get the most out of themselves, and you're helping them do that. Good to hear that your dad was a big part of that. You know, I've got a good friend of mine, Vince Clark, who's the coach at McLennan right here in Waco, Texas, and I think he does the same thing, but he just does it in a different way. And he's taught me a lot about that. So I'm learning all the time about, you know, my job is not to have the flashiest this or the flashiest that. My job is to make sure that this young man, whatever his name may be, is better than he was when he got here. And I've seen how your players do that, and it's kind of amazing. You keep on doing it year after year. So program instead of culture, I like that. Way better than culture. Culture is overused. It's just too much. So, all right. So your mom and dad had a big influence, but your brother Nate, who was a great quarterback at the University of Oklahoma, I think he was 23-2 or something in 2 years, an amazing record, and spent much of the time as the number one ranked team in the country for those 2 years. Tell me about how Nate made you a better athlete and maybe a better coach as well.
Well, he certainly made me a better athlete, and a better person. I'm going back to my Hazelhurst days of us growing up in this neighborhood area, a group of guys that were super competitive. And my brother, I've always been the benefactor of having a 2-year-old brother. It, the younger brother always gets the benefit, you know, and he beat me up and taught me a lot of lessons along the way. But I mean, there's a reason why I always had a chip on my shoulder growing up, and a lot of it was because of him. I wanted to beat him in everything that I did, I never viewed myself as being younger, even though they called me Little Ryan. That was my name, or Little Hip. I never really viewed myself as that. I always thought that I could be as competitive as the older guys were, and my brother was a big part of that. He was always very good, and this, Coach. Our paths were interesting because Nate was probably more wired to go golf wise earlier in his day, and I was actually probably a little bit more wired to go football. And about my seventh, eighth grade year, I could see that my golf, I was becoming one of the better players in the country, kind of at a younger age. And my brother turned into this 6'4", 220-pound man who was a great quarterback. Actually, was I think, and he knows this. I think he messed up. He should be maybe an NFL punter to this day.
Mm.
He is a great punter. Was a great punter. Could bomb. I mean, he's huge. He's got these big levers. But he played quarterback and had a great career. That was all just awesome to watch him go through that. But having that older brother and that competitive spirit for me, still drives me to this day. We still drive each other. He's got a great business in Atlanta right now, a restaurant business that he started up 10 years ago. He now has 14 stores. He sees what we're doing with our golf team, and I think it drives him, to continue to be great. I think that's the way we were wired, and very fortunate to be in a household that thrived on trying to be as great as you can be. We don't have a very long time here in this world, and let's try and do it as great as we can along the way. And as a coach is concerned, he just continues to empower me, encourage me. He knows what it means to be out here in Norman, and he knows kind of the situation we walked into, years and years ago, and where we've come from. And he challenges me to make sure that we're always kind of reflecting back on that, because he thinks that I don't maybe think about that enough, and always worrying about the future. But that's what we do as coaches, right? It's all about that next play and next shot. So he does a great job for me now, just being one of my mentors, and I lean on him quite a bit.
Well, he was obviously the head or the quarterback at one of the best programs in the United States of America at the time, and then his younger brother becomes the golf coach at that same school. So I do want to talk about that, which is kind of crazy, but we don't want to gloss over or pass by your 4 years at Georgia. You guys had a great team, had some tour players on that team, you guys were ranked pretty much every year in the top 5 for sure, and sometimes number 1. I think there was one year when you had all 5 guys average below 71 or something like crazy ridiculous. It was, in those days, it was kind of crazy. But you had a great team. You played for Chris Hack and Jim Douglas, who are still there. I mean, they're still at Georgia. It's crazy. Hack is my age. I think of him as being a lot younger than me, but he's actually my age. Talk about those 4 years.
Well, first of all, two just beauties in our business, Chris Hack and Jim Douglas, two of my great friends. Because not only did I play for those two guys, I actually replaced Douglas as the assistant golf coach, back in 2005. And so I worked with Hacker. And so, we're a lot more than just player coach relationship now. I mean, we've been doing this I've known Hacker for almost 25 years now. And same thing with Douglas. They're just great friends of mine. And yeah, college was a phenomenal time. I mean, I rolled in, you can imagine this. They had just won the national championship in 1999, 2000, the year after. So this would have been the year before I got there. They didn't play as great, but still just a top 3 program in the country. I come in, and we've got, Nick Cassini, who's a Walker Cupper, and Eric Compton, one of the greatest golf stories ever, double heart transplant, All-American, David Miller, All-American, Brian Odom, All-American. Oh, and by the way, Bubba Watson, All-American, 2-time Masters champion. And, I'm one of the big dogs in my mind, right? There's no way that these guys are any better than me. And I kind of came in that way too. I mean, I had a great freshman year. I mean, I was a 3rd-team All-American, and Bubba Watson was our 6th man, which is kind of hard for people to understand. But that's how good we were as a golf team. I mean, all 5 of us were 3rd-team or higher All-Americans that year. We won. That was back when, Hacker and I would kind of joke about it, but we would go to tournaments and try and figure out how many we were going to win by, not if we were going to win. And, unfortunately, we didn't play great at the national championship. We played okay, and Florida got super high that week at Duke, and they just wore everybody out. But that was a great team that I was on, that year, and a lot of fun memories for sure. And college was phenomenal. I learned a lot about myself, who I was. It really helped me as I've gone into the coaching world. I try to not have my guys fall into some of the pitfalls that I fell into as a college player. And so it's the ebb and flow of college golf is interesting, and my career is as interesting as anybody's, because I first team All-American my sophomore year, and by the time I'm a senior, my springs of my senior season, I'm not even in the lineup because my golf game's struggling so badly. Now, granted, we also had great players. You might have heard of them, Brendan Todd and Chris Kirk and Kevin Kisner. And I mean,
I've heard of every one of those guys.
Yeah, I was saying that facetiously because these guys are all, big time PGA Tour players now. But yeah, I mean, it was an interesting career. And then, because of some of my struggles and where I was at, I realized that I didn't maybe want to go play professional golf because I felt the need to get into the coaching world. And I had that desire to do it. And so, fast forward another, 15, 16 years, that's still where my mind is.
Well, you're a great coach, and you obviously know I have a lot of respect for you from that standpoint. That's one of the reasons you're on this podcast today. I think you've got a lot to offer our profession and for a long time. But you did take over at the University of Oklahoma in, I guess it would be the summer of 2009. And you took over a program that was not doing very well compared to what it had once been. It had once been a perennial power, and it was no longer that. So before we get into, I'm going to ask you a question about the rebuild. But before we get to that, it needs to be said publicly that I actually hand-delivered you to Joe Castiglione at Jimmy's Egg on I-35. Let's make no mistake about it. You had come to Stillwater to interview with Mike Holder, myself, as the assistant coach for both programs. And while you were in the airport, you got a call in the Atlanta airport from Joe Castiglione. Wow. No, not many people know this.
Yeah, this is a pretty wild story. And when it comes out, I always get hammered by people about how this worked. And you got to backtrack a little bit. Kind of my wonky playing career. I actually turned professional being the assistant golf coach at the University of Georgia. I had gotten my game back, my motivation, my desire. So I turned pro the end of 2007. Then I bust up my elbow the start of 08, have surgery, and I realized I got to get back. I had a family support, by the way, at this time. I was married. I had my firstborn, Addie. She was born in 07. So it wasn't as simple as, hey, we're just going to keep hanging on and keep grinding through this pro golf. I needed a job. And so, and at that time, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. And obviously coaching was as high up on that list as possible. I called up Coach Holder and said, hey, I'm looking for a job. He goes, well, I might have you one, just hang on tight. Well, in the meantime, the Oklahoma head job had come open. Well, because my brother had played here, because I knew a little bit of some players in the game, there might be an opportunity, even coming from the position that I was in. Well, lo and behold, it didn't look very good for me on the University of Oklahoma. I was moving forward with Oklahoma State. My wife had already bought a couple orange shirts, which to this day, we don't have any orange really in our house. As you know, a Georgia Bulldog, that's a Florida Gator, that's a Clemson Tiger, that's an Auburn Tiger. So similar at the University of Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and the Texas Longhorns have an interesting color too. So that being said, I get a phone call back from the Oklahoma boys, and this is on my trip out to Stillwater, and they were like, well, sounds like we need to move kind of quickly. I was like, well, maybe we do. But I go and meet up with Coach Holder and Coach McGraw, and you're right. You popped me in the car the next day and hand delivered me to Joe Castiglione, and I took the job the next day. So,
well, there was two reasons. One, I wanted to show you I was a good guy, and even though I knew I knew you weren't going to be an assistant from me if you had a head coaching possibility. But number two, I wanted to meet Joe Castiglione. And the very first thing I did when I met Joe Castiglione, I think I said, or maybe I said it in my mind, but I think I said, "Hey, Joe, it's great to finally meet you. And here's your new head golf coach, Ryan Hybl." But
Wow.
anyway, the rest, as they say, is history. You've been there ever since.
Been there, yeah. You're 14 now, Coach. It's amazing to think back to it. When we took over here, we had a lot of changing to do in our program, and we gave a lot of love into the guys, but we certainly had to. And you'll love this story. We certainly had to change our program and what that meant. Right. No better sign of that than this past week. I had a comment from one of my current guys. Okay. He goes, "Coach, I've heard all these old stories from back when you first started here. You've gotten softer.
Hmm.
I've heard all these stories." And I looked at him, I said, "Let me tell you, I haven't gotten softer, but our mentality and who we are as a program has significantly changed." It's like when you get a group of like-minded individuals like what we currently have, because we've been working on it for years, the expectation doesn't need to be changed on what the work's going to be, right? The work is already expected to be happening and taking place. And what are you doing in your off season? What are you doing in the summertime? And what are you doing? Because forget about when we actually, have the call during the school year. It's all this other stuff. Well, back then we didn't quite have that. So yeah, we had to change a lot of who we were and a lot of our programming pieces. And so it's amazing when I think back to it, where we've come from. The mindset is everything. And when you are able to get that group of people around you, forget about talent. Talent is what it is. I mean, you can only go as far as you can based on, how hard you're willing to work and what that looks like. So no, I don't, but because of the comment, you'll love this. We're really starting our off season programming today. So we're going to kind of get some of the softness straightened out.
Boy, whichever kid said that, you don't publicize his name. He will be an enemy on the team. Wow. Okay. Well, you know what? I don't like to refer to it as an off season. I like to refer to it as another season. And I know you believe that, or you wouldn't be working them the way you're getting ready to. But it's like, this isn't an off season where a kid, maybe gets to take a little bit of a breather from the day-to-day competitiveness part of it, but as far as traveling or qualifying. But the truth is, this is where he makes gains right now. If he's got a brain in his head, he'll take this other season very seriously.
No, there's no doubt, and we certainly do that around here. And I just try and make sure that our guys are competitive every single day and everything that we do. Whether that's in the weight room or with their equipment, or with our mindset and how we walk into a building and all these different things that we talk about is, how I go back to, that neighborhood mentality that I grew up in. I mean, how competitive can you get? Because iron sharpens iron, and we know that, and the more better players and people you can surround yourself with, the better you're just going to become. And ultimately, that's what our goal is, right? Is to try and figure out, by the time they get done with our programming, that, are you ready to go play professional golf? Have you treated yourself like a pro during your college years? Because the worst thing that you can have as a college coach is a guy coming back and saying, "Man, I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't prepared for that." And that is, because I talk to a lot of my old contemporaries even now. I still communicate with a lot of those guys and ask them questions about, what would you do differently? How would you do this and how would you do that? My goals are, well, why are we doing anything differently? I want my guys to be more prepared. So when they come out of here, I actually think 2 years into the professional ranks, they want to come back because they want that accountability piece again. Because sometimes you get out there and they don't have that accountability. They don't have that team surrounding them. And that's a big challenge that I always get with my guys, is make sure that you have your group of people around you to create your team, because I know my guys will miss that. Why is Liv being successful right now? It's because they have a team dynamic. That's the only, I don't want to say only reason, but that's a big reason. I've Abe Answer, who was one of my best players that's ever played for me here. After the first couple of weeks, I asked him, what are you loving about it? I love the team. I love the team. These guys, they want the team. They love it. Why is the Ryder Cup so successful? Why is the Walker Cup so successful when it comes to what these kids want and what they need? It's because they want to lean on each other. If LeBron James did everything for himself and it was never about a team championship, he wouldn't like it as much either. You know, if Tom Brady if there wasn't a team aspect and a team championship attached to it, they wouldn't love it as much either. And that's one of the frustrating parts about our sport, and that's why college golf is so successful. And we really are in the peak of its moment right now, in my opinion, because everybody can get behind their teams.
I think that's well said, and I think something that's overlooked sometimes is this is the time of your life when you're going to get to be on a team where you generally in professional golf you do not. So that's really good. So you've spent and you said something a moment ago about the people around you. I mean, that's really how you've created this program, is with humans, with people, with great people. So that's what you do, and that's what I attempt to do here at Baylor, is get great people. So, and that's, I think, one of the secrets to maintaining your success that you've been having. But let's just talk about some people. So I want you to give a little short snippet on each of the people that I'm about to say. Okay, one is the earliest commitment, maybe in the history of commitments, would be Brad Dahlke. And a lot of people criticized you for taking that commitment, but I knew better that his family was an OU family, and he was a great player already. This was fine. But tell me about Brad Dahlke.
I get that question quite a bit about what has helped us turn our program around. And there's obviously been so many people just great supporting cast throughout the years, from players to former players to administration to whatever. But Abe Answer was a big turning point for us because he made us probably look even better than what we were at the time, which allowed me to be able to recruit better players. But right behind that is Brad Dahlke. And it was thought out. I don't want that was the interesting part. We knew it was going to be big news. I mean, it came on the ESPN ticker the next day. And Brad was obviously a big time player at a young age. He loved the University of Oklahoma. But we also felt like, and he knew this because I explained it to his mom, his dad, him. Most recruits can help you on the backside of recruiting once you commit. Brad was so young that he was going to help us on the front end.
Yes.
So guess who shows up on our property before Brad even shows up? And a lot of it's because they knew that we were serious and we were going to be in a way better spot with our program. A guy like Max McGreevy, who ends up finishing off his career with a national championship. A guy like Grant Hirschman, 2014. Those guys showed up on property because they knew not just that Brad was coming, it was because they knew that we were serious about our golf program. Right. And it gave us validity. And I do remember getting my chops busted by many of my contemporaries at the time, going, what are you doing? This is not good. Well, that scenario doesn't happen very much in our sport. I get it. This was a unique situation. We needed a little bit of pop with our golf program, and we got it. And then the Cinderella story for a guy like Brad is he had a great career here. He wins a national championship, and I just, he sat with me at our football game this week against the Baylor Bears, which, by the way, thanks for the butt whooping.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. But I just love spending time with my former guys, and Brad is a great Sooner and will forever be. I mean, he's got a lot of pictures up in this building, and we owe him a lot. And when I get the question about what fills my cup now as I've been doing this, that's a big part of it. When my former guys come back and they are around our program and they help lift up our other guys and challenge them, and that probably gets me going as much as anything outside of our just development of our current guys.
Well, I agree with you there. The question was asked of Amos Alonzo Stagg, who was a great football coach 120 years ago. That's a long time ago. I realized that. But they asked him, how's your team this year? And he said, I don't know. Ask me in 20 years. And you'll know what kind of, men they become, husbands they become, businessmen, people out in society. And that's the beauty of coaching, is you get to have that lifelong relationship. And so when Brad Dalkey comes back and sits with you at a football game, no, he's not shooting scores for the University of Oklahoma anymore, but he's literally becoming the man that you hoped he would become. And so I think that's really well said, and thank you for that. But you mentioned Max McGree because he was the next guy I was going to ask about. Easily one of my favorite Oklahoma Sooners present. Sorry that I have to say that around you because you're one of my favorite ones as well. But Max is an incredible, incredible young man, and probably, to me, speaks to the inner will of a human being better than anybody I've ever seen. Just like he's willed a PGA Tour card into existence by who he is.
There's no question about it, and you're not supposed to have favorites. He's definitely up there on my favorite board. And I go back through his recruiting, and you can remember this because you didn't offer him a spot, and I did. And
ouch! Wow. I did offer him a spot.
Hey, we said at the beginning we've got a lot of history, McGraw.
We do.
No, I'm just teasing, but I'm going to tell you a quick recruiting story about that because it's one of the best stories of our program. Blake Smart, who was my assistant at the time, he's and Blake's a great coach. He's the head coach at the University of Memphis. I always have loved how Blake, coaches the X's and O's. He does a really, really nice job. And at the time, we had kind of made the turn a little bit with our program. We made the championship in 11. We made the championship in 12. Not only made the championship, but we honestly, of all the years in 12, 13, 14 that we didn't make match play, we should have made match play in 12 at Riviera. We had made the turn, and Max McGreevy was a 2013 graduate, a little bit under the radar. I loved how he worked and practiced. He was old school in his approach with his dad, kind of teaching him how to work and how to go about his business on the golf course. And so I fell in love with kind of that side of Max and how gritty he was on the golf course. Talent-wise, he wasn't as talented as what most people would sit there and go, well, this guy can really swing it, right? But, man, this guy could get a lot out of his game. And that's kind of who we are a little bit. I try not to lose sight on who we are as a program. And even to this day, we can wrap our arms around maybe a little bit better player at times, but we still have to remember kind of who we are. And I always go back to Max McGreevy and thinking about him as a player, as a junior golfer, and what he turned into. But he showed up on property. And the reason why I brought up Blake Smart, I told Blake before Max came on his probably second or third unofficial visit, I said, we're at that point. We're going to create value and not feel like we have to throw out these big scholarship offers. And this is our chance right now. We've got our in-state guy. We want him. So Max, his folks show up. I know he wouldn't mind me sharing this story because it's a great story. He shows up and he sits right here in my office where I'm sitting right now across the desk. And I tell him that, exactly where we're at. What we want you, but at the time we didn't have very much cash, right? And this is where we're at. And he starts crying across the way. And he was crying not because of the offer, but he was crying because I think deep down, he's never really told me this, but I think he thought it was going to be a lot bigger of a situation to help out his parents because he was thinking about his mom and dad, which I really appreciated. And I told him, I said, man, this is supposed to be a great time. I want you here. And this thing's got a chance of getting better based on, what ends up happening with the roster and blah, 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 blah. Right. Well, they leave here and it was kind of a sad visit because of this. Right. And sure enough, the next day, Max McGreevy calls me and commits. And I told Blake that afternoon, I was like, we finally have turned a corner because we have something that we don't have to put a dollars and cents to. And I'm going to say this to you. based on how the roster worked out and just how things changed. Max McGreevy ended up basically being on a full scholarship his whole 4 years, never paid a dime, and finishes winning a national championship. And you want to talk about a Cinderella story, and what he meant. The guy stepped foot on every plane and sat next to me, and always was picking my brain about anything and everything. And he went through some tough times. He was a very emotional guy. He cried in my office a million times. That's why I wasn't afraid to tell you that the first time, because he's just an emotional guy, and I love him to death. And I'd go to battle with him every single day of the year, and he's just a true warrior.
Well, can I tell a story as well? And this is what made Max my favorite University of Oklahoma golfer, pretty much. Well before that visit, that last visit that he took with you, he came up for a visit to me in Stillwater. And we got out to the fifth hole, and I was just showing him the golf course. And I said, here, let's get out and look at this green. It's got like an elephant buried in the middle of the green here on number 5. Let's go look at this. And he had his head down, and he was crying. And I said, Max, I'm so sorry. Did I say something? I mean, I truly didn't mean to. And this is way before you were at the point of offering him. Okay. So this is a month or so before that. And it took him a while to gather himself, but he said, Coach, I've been dreaming my whole life about this moment and it finally occurred to me, I'm on a visit at Oklahoma State, and I just couldn't believe it. It just kind of overwhelmed me. And so some coaches would look at that and say, oh, this kid's soft, or he's just a little too sentimental or sensitive or whatever. I took it the complete opposite. It overwhelmed him that all of his hard work had manifested itself in a visit at one of the best programs in the country. And it just occurred to him. So I know he had that same feeling many, many times with you. Just wears his emotions right there where you can see him. And I love it. I think he's great.
And he's on the PGA Tour now. I mean, and just doing great stuff. He just finished a week ago, and he's a great story. He's about to get married this winter time, and can't wait to be a part of the wedding. So really, really love Max McGreevy.
Yeah, Max is super. Okay, Charlie Saxon was a golf camper for me at Oklahoma State, and both Max and Charlie have been on this podcast before. So tell me about Charlie. I love the guy.
Oh, Big Charles, man, what a guy. Came in at his 150 pounds, left here at 215. Always had a mission plan about what he was going to do. And of all the guys I've ever had here at Oklahoma, probably the biggest believer in himself, true believer, not fake, because some guys can have some fake belief. True believer in himself, and that's why he is where he is. There's no doubt about it. And for that, I always, we learn a lot more from our guys, right, than they probably actually learn from us. That's one of the things I always hold on to with Charlie Saxon, and it's always a talking point for me, personally with my guys is you want to go find you some true belief. We got to get more in line with Charlie Saxon, and just one of the greatest guys of all time.
I think Charlie's a perfect example of the difference in confidence and conviction. He's not just confident. Confidence is something that just comes and goes with a feeling, but he's convicted that he's going to be a player, and he's convicted. I was talking to him when he had his injury here in the last year, and he was talking all about how he was going to be back and everything. That guy has true conviction. Wonderful guy, an awesome guy that walks his faith, and really, really good to know.
And I will jump in here too as well. One of the best things that he ever did for his playing career, when he went over to China, which a lot of folks are not willing to do, and I would have put money on it in a month that Charlie would have been lost at some point. He wasn't very good. He wasn't very aware of his surroundings at that time. I'm like, Charles is going to end up in some weird place over there, and I was always worried about him, but he figured it out. He figured out how to win golf tournaments over there. And that's where his confidence picked up that much more and realized that he belonged. And so just a credit to him for going and doing something different. And as golfers, we have to be willing to travel and do some things that are a little bit uncomfortable, right? I mean, that's what makes us who we are. We have to be uncomfortable and feel good about what that looks like and feels like, and he did that.
Definitely did that. That was honestly something I noticed as well. Okay, this one really, really special. Kyle Lewis and his mom and dad, Marty and Kelly. Tell me about Kyle. I recruited him as well, and just a wonderful human being.
Well, if you were in my office right now, I still have a little memorial up on one of my lockers. It's in my office right now, and Kyle, he was my first recruit to the University of Oklahoma that committed to us, um, and just a great guy. He was a leader. He was a great basketball player. I loved watching him play basketball. Went to a couple different games, and his mom and dad, Marty and Kelly, just phenomenal people. Still very involved with our golf program. By the way, they come wish us off at the national championship and Big 12 championship every single year. They come to the Charlie Coast Center and just give us all big hugs, and my guys know who they are. But yeah, Kyle passed away in a terrible car crash coming back home from a high school event in late July. It was kind of an honorary event where the best players in the state got to go over to the Tulsa area and play, and yeah, it was a tough time, terrible time to lose a player. Now, he had never played for me, so obviously in for our team, it would have probably been even that much different, right? Had it happened, 2 months later. So he hadn't gotten to us, so it was more of a me thing, and obviously a program and athletic department, but it was just a tough time for all of us. And what I'm so thankful for is the Lewis family and just their involvement with our program. And they continue to. I mean, we have a Kyle Lewis Finish Strong Award that we came up with 5 or 6 years ago. The low final round guy throughout the year gets the Kyle Lewis Finish Strong Award, and Quade Cummins, one of the best players that we've had here, just texted me randomly 3 or 4 weeks ago and said that of all the awards that he's won, it's that one means the most to him.
Oh man, that is so good to hear. Yeah, Kyle Lewis, great Oklahoma kid who never got to play for the University of Oklahoma, but his memory still there, always will be. Bill Alcorn, he's a great Baylor Bear who is your assistant coach right now and has been for 5 or 6 years anyway. I know what I think makes Bill a great person. I think he's a great Christian, husband, father, certainly good golf knowledge, very disciplined. What do you think are his best qualities?
Well, all those same things that you just hit up on. He's phenomenal. He's great for our program. He's a great leader. He's found his way as a coach during his time. I mean, he's going into year 6 now with us, and he's our associate head coach now, and deserves that title, and because he does everything the right way for our guys, and he's very intentional about how to get each one of our guys better. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why Bill does a great job for us and is a great friend of mine and our families, and has turned into not just a good Baylor Bear, but he's now a good Oklahoma Sooner. Appreciate that. And
Well, but you're still a good Georgia Bulldog, even
yeah,
though
no,
you
no, I know, yeah, but
okay.
but at the end of the day, he just does everything at a super high level for us with all of our guys, and is truly thinking on a day to day basis about what does it mean to try and get the best out of each one of our guys. And I can't ask for anything better out of a guy that works with me. He doesn't work, for me. He works with me, and that's that's what we try and create around here. And on top of that, he's got a great family, and family is a big deal for us here. And making sure that we are, our current players understand how valuable our family piece is. Right? We can't just be so tied into nothing but work that they don't understand what our family is all about as well, because we're with them kind of full time, and a lot of our families miss out. And one of the things that I try and make sure that we do is not have that happen full time.
A wonderful example of, my two assistant coaches here at Baylor, Ryan Blagg and now Mikkel, who's the associate head coach as well now. But both of them had young children. And I've always made it a real, I don't know, priority that they do not come into the office until their kids are off to school where they need to be. Don't do any of that and any of this for us. Don't do it until you've done that for your family. So I think it's an important commitment. Bill Alcorn, great Baylor Bear, great Oklahoma Sooner. He's an awesome guy. And I know Bill is going to be a great head coach one day. I don't know when and where, but you and I both feel that.
No doubt.
Okay. What do you wish you had known in your college experience that would have made you better prepared for pro golf? Now, you just mentioned that earlier, like you don't want your players to come back and say, oh, I wish I'd have done this. I wish I'd known that. But I did ask this question to several coaches here recently and several players. What do you wish you'd have known in college that would have made the transition? So if you could answer the question by maybe saying what you're doing for your players that's trying to prepare them, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that question because I could probably spend a couple hours, trying to figure what we try and do. But, in a nutshell, treating our mind and our body like a pro. Again, I wish I probably would have known my resources better back when I was playing and understanding what all that meant. I mean, just education is key, right? So wisdom is key. I mean, we have things on our side now. And, back when I was playing college golf, I'll be honest with you, I feel like the Tiger Woods era, that was my era, kind of got ruined a little bit because all the swing instructors, all everybody talked about was Tiger's golf swing and how it needed to be, in certain positions, and you needed to, coil and not move your lower body, and we're going to get the biggest upper body turn and this. And it was all about Tiger. Now you have instructors all over the place that are teaching just great body movements and doing things, how your body actually works and how the club works for you, but you can make it be better. And I like where golf is heading when it comes to the instruction piece, because you can see many, many different golf swings that work well on the PGA Tour. And I feel like during my time frame, it was so much more about Tiger and that you kind of had to be a certain way. And I had a unique golf swing myself, and I got wrapped up in that. And so I for me personally, I wish I would have had the wisdom and the education a little bit more of what that means. But, for our guys currently, and what we try and do is to make sure that there is no, transition other than you're going to be playing potentially more golf. But I'm going to tell you, we play as much golf as we can around here. I don't do it maybe like everybody else does it. I don't know. I can't really vouch for other people's programs, but that's one of the pieces I talk about is how you better be ready to play golf every single day. And, we compete. Now we're not just coming out to play golf. We're coming out to compete and trying to, again, this is something I talk to my guys about, how when you're 10 years old and the first time you shoot, you break 40. We all remember that feeling, right? First time that you shoot 36. I can remember the first time I broke par. Can you maintain that same mentality as a sophomore in college, into your spring semester and you're not playing? That's the kind of mindset that you have to have. That's one of the reasons why I've always loved Phil Mickelson, because I truly feel like the guy's trying to shoot a course record every single time he goes out, and he's just not going through the motions. And I think as golfers, we can do that at times. I'm just going to feel a girl out and see how it goes. And before you know it, you look up, you're through number 4, and I'm 1 over par, or I'm 1 under. And no, I want a guy that literally is trying to birdie the first hole every single time we go out. And because the start's just as important as the finish. And anyway, I'm getting off on all kinds of different tangents here, but it's just one of those things that I want our guys to be as prepared as they possibly can to go make money for a living if that's what they want to do. And I would say that any resource we can throw at that, we're going to do, and make sure that all their cup gets filled up to where they don't feel like they're empty in any area.
Well, piggybacking off of that, but also that backyard mentality that you had in Hazelhurst, Georgia, you still want some of that. So you give them all the resources, but you'd really hope they still have that mindset, I would think. I'm sure that's what you believe.
Oh yeah. No, I mean the resources are what they are. I
Hmm.
mean, if you're not willing to invest in your body and your mind and your golf like we wanted, then I mean, I hate to say it, you're gonna kind of get sifted through the system and the program.
You know,
Um, because
you mentioned
guys,
go ahead.
I was gonna say because guys that are all in all the time, they come out a different monster than the guys that just end up kind of somewhat going through the motions.
Yeah, you don't want people just going through the motions. And you speak about resources. The best resource you and I have is great student athletes. And the best resource they get is you hope as a player the coach gets another great player in here because you want people around you that are competitive. I love the fact you say guys get ready to play every day and compete every day. It's going to happen. Probably need just about every program could use a little bit more of that. So what's the biggest change you've seen in our coaching profession since you got in? Now that's 15, 16, 17 years since you think I walked with you in your first assistant coaching round in 2005 at Sun River at the preview. I remember walking with you. But what's the biggest change you've seen in that time?
I would say as a profession, I feel like our coaches have just gotten extremely that much better in my time frame. The amount of knowledge and education and coaching that goes on now. I mean, like this podcast that you're doing right now. I mean, this is going to be hitting up programs, and you do a great job with that. And so you're giving information out that people can utilize if they want, and it just is happening everywhere. And we have a great group of coaches. I mean, don't we? I mean, let's just
Mm,
acknowledge it. It is what it is, and there's a reason why I think the dynasties are going to be harder to come by because back when I was playing, there was 5 golf programs that all the good players kind of went to, and now I could pick 50 programs that are great when it comes to the coaching, to the facilities, to the schedule that they'll play, maybe even more than 50, maybe even upwards of 100. I mean, everybody's doing such a great job. And that's why recruiting is that much more difficult because there's more options. And yeah, I would say just in my time frame, I think the coaching piece has gotten so much better in the last 15, 18 years.
100% agree with you. Coaches are better now. And remember, when you were a freshman in college, about 55 or 60% of the Power Five schools had an assistant coach. I mean, not everybody had an assistant coach in those days. And so there's more people getting in. I think more quality people are getting in. And I think there's a lot more information now available that's been great. All right. Couple more questions here before we finish up. One, you guys are moving to the SEC. Now, I know that you've been hit with that a bunch. You and the University of Texas are both going to the SEC. So, how do you see that for you as a golf coach, for your university in general? I mean, how's that going to play out, do you think?
Well, it's a couple different thoughts come through my head when we talk about the SEC. Number one, I'm really excited for our university and for the athletic department. I mean, are you kidding me? Everybody understands what's going on here when it comes to the cash and the trickle down effect to all of our programs. It is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and for me personally, I'm a big football guy, and I'm going to love it when the University of Alabama is rolling to Norman, Oklahoma, or maybe I do get to make a special trip to, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I mean, go to some of these places that are just high end energy. I mean, did you guys watch the Alabama LSU game this weekend? It was
Mm.
incredible, right? So that is unbelievable. Now, on the flip side, Big 12 golf on the men's side, because that's all I don't really pay attention to necessarily the women's side as much. But on the men's side, I would argue that we have the toughest conference in the Big 12 when it comes to all of the athletics. Us and men's basketball, I feel like, I mean, it is so difficult to win a conference championship. You know that, I know that, right? And so it's not like going to the SEC men's golf conference is going to change how hard it is to win a golf conference. Even though they've got great teams in the SEC, I mean, phenomenal teams, and their depth is strong. It's been so difficult to win a conference championship in the Big 12. So, and we're out here in the central part of the country, so a little bittersweet to not be able to go to a place like Prairie Dunes maybe ever again for a conference championship, which we're going there this year, and I love going there. It's just a slice of heaven up in Hutchinson, Kansas, and probably my favorite golf course in the central part of the country, arguably. That in Southern Hills. I mean, anyway, so I'm looking forward to the move. It really doesn't change our scheduling that much, right? Other than our conference championship, but we're going to have open arms about the whole deal. We're excited about the move, especially from an athletic department standpoint and the trickle down effect of what that means for our golf program.
I agree with you. People have been asking me, how will this change schedules? I said, well, for the top schools, it's not going to change anything they do other than the conference championship. They'll still be in the same invitational events, the same type of events. So, and obviously the Southeastern Conference just got a lot stronger with the University of Texas and the University of Oklahoma golf teams going down there. So, and I think I'm pretty excited about the teams we have that we're adding are really good golf schools as well. So I think it's all just part of this conference realignment that's just really a lot different than it used to be, but that's okay. Anyway, we're going to miss you. We will. But we won't see as much, but in April, but that's okay. All right, last question I've got for you today. A lot of people think of you as being a tough guy, and one of your players this week said, you used to be tougher than you are now and all of that. But I know that there's a side of you that not all these people get to see all the time, certainly at tournaments. But I know you're a girl dad. So that's got to melt your heart. Talk to me about being a girl dad.
Well, there's nothing greater than being a dad, number one, but being a girl dad is something special. I only grew up, I had an older brother, right? So all I knew is kind of boys, boys, boys. And when I was blessed with two extra females in my life, Addie and Harper. Addie is a freshman in high school here at Norman High, and Harper is she's 11 now. She's a fifth grader at McKinley on campus, and both of them are phenomenal. Couldn't ask for two better kids, and thankfully I have a great wife. As a coach's wife, it's so difficult just in general of what they end up having to manage, but also just the family piece. We're out here in the central part of the country too. I don't have family to kind of help out. So my wife has been a single parent for, arguably the last 15 years. 14 years being out here. We have a lot of help with babysitters and whatnot, but she does an unbelievable job just managing our family. But yeah, I mean, the girls they're awesome. I mean, I get to be around 20-year-old dudes all day long, and then I go home and I'm around these ladies. And let me tell you, the difference between the amount of words that get spoken at our dinner table is unbelievable. And it's great for me as a dad because I can just kind of sit back and listen to it. Now, at times I'm going, how can you guys be talking this much? This is impossible to have this many words. Kind of reminds me a little bit of you, McGraw. I mean, you talk a lot, and I mean, these ladies, they will talk. But it's honestly great for me because I get to hear about their day. And I know when it comes to boys, I'm not a boy dad, but I know those boys, because I was one of them, they don't talk very much when they go home.
Not at all.
Our nature is not to spill the beans, and a lot of beans get spilled at my house. So I get to kind of soak that all in.
Well, thank you for sharing that. A lot of people don't know that part about your life. They see you as a competitive coach out on the golf course, and they don't get to know that there's a soft daddy on the inside there. So that's great to see. Well, listen, Ryan, I appreciate you spending an hour or so with me today, just kind of sharing some memories. We have a lot of history going back, as we said, but you also gave some great perspectives on just coaching that I think will help the young coaches that listen to this podcast a lot, and some of the veteran coaches too that could hear some of these things. I know I learned a couple things already, so thank you for that.
No, thanks for having me on. You guys do a great job, and I appreciate you having me on.